this whole thing with Black Lives Matter and racism. People, a lot of people seem like seeming racist. A lot of people who normally aren't starting to sound racist, and people, cops, videos of cops shooting black people, and then a black dude shooting a bunch of cops. The news saying that he was specifically targeting white people. Maybe it's true. Nonetheless, it was at the Black Lives Matter protests. So blaming Black Lives Matter, but Black Lives Matter, they weren't that guy. They got scared and tried to, run. From what I hear, and they're trying to act like the guy who shot all the white cops was for Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter and Black Panthers are a terrorist group. They're trying. Some people trying to say that, and it's like, they ain't taking white people and cutting their heads off or bombing buildings and stuff. I mean, one guy did some, shot some cops. I'm not saying it's a small thing, but that's an individual person, and they bring in some robot to blow him up. Now, where did they get this robot? And you gotta understand this whole thing. The whole society is training everyone for cybernetics. They want mind control through chips in you. They want to control everybody. That's why. That's the whole reason they're keeping their thumb on talent and charisma. Especially musicians and free thinkers of genius. They don't want innovation in any of the arts or anything. They want the only innovations to be in computers and cybernetics and AI. And it's the whole reason for all the pro-gay and everything, because that undermine or it our basic connection to the universe is male and female. Our souls, our chromosomes. Even if you don't believe in souls, we've got XY chromosomes and XX chromosomes from conception. That's our basic connection to existence. And not only that, but it's our greatest desire, to have sex and love with the opposite sex. It's the most beautiful thing in life, and it's the most pleasurable thing in life. And to act like it is not only something that is replaceable or changeable, but also something that is comparable to something that is disgusting, and to act like replacing it or integrating it with something that is disgusting is acceptable, or even better, preferable is what they're trying to act now. Trying to act like if you don't believe that is a good thing, then you are an invalid person. And the whole thing, see, in Black Lives Matter, they are accepting homos and transsexuality, which completely neutralizes and makes them just a government pawn. And the whole thing, and I predicted this back in my videos where I was up on the deck, that they were using Obama and they were using homos and mixing homophobia in with racism, so that anyone who stood for racial equality would have to stand for homos, and trying to act like black having dark skin is the same thing as sucking a dick, basically. And and all this was, accumulating, and they were gonna try and start racism again. And they are. I mean, there's been subtle racism, but not like this, and not like there used to be. You know, not where they're trying to make a race war, which is impossible to end unless everybody's dead of one race, the enemy race, whoever side you're on. If you are a racist or slavery, the racial violence because of race can only end with the eradication of race or enslavement of a race. And because race is not changeable, and it's neither should you worry to change it. It is not important. Character and principles are what's important. And what we should be fighting is racism, not race. And I'll tell you, people want to say, because they've used so many different compound suggestions and so many different little subversions that conduit in the schools over decades, to guide and train the mind and guide belief to an end, and those ends are where everything's headed. And they used homo pro-gay to undermine Martin Luther King's work, and racial nonviolence, because they use sorcery in conjunction, whether you believe in sorcery or not, right? The manipulation of every institution, every media and business, all being in accord and proliferating and propagating ideology, okay, is going to work on your unconscious. And even if you don't believe in direct, telepsychic communication or interference or controls in a force of psychological press of elements that are all in accord and conduited in thought trains towards certain ends, it's going to press your unconscious, all right, regardless. And they've done this, and they've used homos, because for one, it's one of the most disgusting things to our nature. Two, it is mixing in and claiming alternative to something that is by far the most pleasurable and most beautiful and most desirable and most innate and intrinsic aspect and function of being human, which is desire and love for the opposite sex. And not only that, but it's procreation. And this attacks us puts force and press on something very fundamental to human existence, and at the one of the basic factors of our psychological construct, and not only that, but our functional construct as human beings. And they have tried to force any racial equality movements to have to support that also, to be sure that not only does it insult intrinsically humanity and races that have been oppressed, but also generate racism to, because knowing that at the deepest part of our being, knowing that gay stuff is being used this way. Our unconscious knows what it's doing, but no one wants to admit it. It it pisses people off at the races that are seeking racial equality. And I'll tell you. Let me give you an example here. And I'm not saying this is because black people have supported gays. That's just it's not that black people have supported gays. It's that the government is trying to put those two things together, and they have, and not only in our psychology but also in political necessity. And it is it all it amounts to is more control, and it's just going to be a something to steer any group with it, and there's just no real power in it now. And I'm glad that there's a lot of people who see through all this stuff and still do not accept racism or any kind of racial division or division by race. And let me in the videos where I had on the porch, I was talking about how they were going to try and restart racism, and they were gonna start after Obama, because the Black Masons. I remember. Okay, the Black Masons and the White Masons, they do the same things. It's just the Black Masons have been. They're all servants of Satan, so they're gonna do what they think is gonna be useful to Satan's agenda. And the Black Masons have been convinced, and I suppose, as to do all the satanic stuff out in the open to cover for the White Masons, because the White Masons do it hidden. So if you ever see a Mason doing satanic stuff, it's always a Black Mason. And when I was at the fire academy, and I was talking to a guy who was a 32nd degree Mason after class, and I was talking to him about, I was like, talking to him about how Masons were satanic, and he was like, I mentioned Aleister Crowley, and I mentioned, Albert Pike, and he was like, yeah, well, they're strange people and everything. And then I was like, then I told him about how I went to when I worked at a hotel, there were a bunch of Masons there, and they had a ceremony, and they were all crosses in Christ in the banquet room, and then they told us not to clear out the smaller rooms till they were completely finished, but our manager said to go ahead. So we went in there, and there was like a skull on a plinth and swords, and the skull it was a human skull, and it had a hole in it like it'd been hit with a pickaxe, and it was human, and it was real, and it was a murder victim. And then outside in the open, they had all these books. They had this huge book table. It was like 150 foot long, and there were books all over, the usual Mason stuff, Prometheus, Luciferian type stuff. And then there was this huge black book with a red inverted pentagram on it. And I was looking at it, and I was like, I looked over at the bookkeeper, and he kind of looked and raised his eyebrows, and then I walked down the way, And I looked back, and he was covering it up with a towel. And I told the guy at the fire academy this, the 32nd degree Mason, and he said, well, were they black Masons or white? That was his first question. I said, well, they were black Masons. And he said, well, there's a difference between black and white. I was like, oh, huh. And ended the conversation. And that, proved to me that, because I've read Albert Pike, I know that there's not a difference. I know that they do the same things in private. I've read the books, and they talk about the same things that I saw the Black Masons doing. And these are White Mason books, and it's the same exact stuff. They just have the Black Masons do it out in public. So when somebody sees Masons doing something satanic, it's always Black Masons. And that is to cover for the White Masons. So the White Masons can say, it wasn't us, it was the black guy. There's a difference between black and white. And that's what they've been doing for, since the Black Masons started. And that's what they're doing with Obama in the government. Okay, they wanted to push all this stuff through for totalitarianism. And totalitarianism, you don't have to have a dictator. The definition of totalitarianism is the government in every aspect of your life, which usually has a dictator, but it doesn't have to. And that's what we've got. And they've used Obama, and they've implemented him. He's willing. He's evil. They have implemented him to do all the dirty work out in the open. And I saw him doing it. I saw him, getting ready to do this. And because I was in a hotel room, and a bunch of weird stuff. Somehow I got turned around. I was going north in North Carolina. Somehow I ended up in South Carolina at Dillon. And I was in a hotel room, and then something in the wall said something about leaving an impression. I was like, what? And then all these visions hit me. And the next room, I could see into the next room, and Obama was in there, and he was raping and killing kids. And he had a hooker that came in, and they put her on the bed, and he was fucking the kids in front of her. And it was horrible. And I knew it was a vision because the voodoo priest who brought the kids was outside the priestess, and I looked, and there was nobody there. And I knew it was a vision instead of reality. So I had to endure this horrific shit. And, it was hours and hours, and I felt like I had a gun on me the whole time. And finally I broke and panicked. And I went and I told the hotel manager, I said, there's a government official in the next room raping and killing kids. And then had him call the cops. And then the cops came, and they just they arrested me immediately. And they were taking me to a hospital. And the hotel manager, before they took me away, put his hand on my arm and said, I got the same report from the same room last night, to let me know that I wasn't crazy. That someone else saw the same thing from the same room. It's not my air conditioner is busted. This was a political figure in the next room raping and killing kids. And I'd seen, I'd talked to that fire guy. And don't act like that makes firemen racist, please. Stop grouping stuff. People are individuals. There's going to be people in every group that are bad, and there's going to be people in every group that are good. It's group mentality that ruins things, because it's always the lowest people in the group that everybody in the group wants to adhere to, in general. And everybody lowers they homogenize and become lower, and they become animal-like. Now, and years before, I had in Memphis, there was a woman, and she had a truck, and I talked to her at a gas station, and she needed some help. She was supposedly a Christian lady, and was, trying to do missionary work of some sort to help people. And I helped, she needed some help moving some stuff, so I helped her.
And I found out she had a kid, and she was in a court case because some guy she had let into her house, some fag had raped him. And I found out later, after a few weeks of visiting her and helping her, I found out that this was the third time this had happened, and every time she had let a homo into her house, trying to forgive him and accept him and offer him and teach him Christ. And every single time, and it was a different homo every time, and every time they raped her kid, and she did not put her foot down. You know what she did though? And this ain't, don't act like this is something good. Instead of facing facts that they're perverts and that they don't have morals and that they will abuse people if you let them, instead of admitting that she was talking to me and going on about how the child service, because the child services were taking her kid finally, and she started going on those niggers, and I was like, what the fuck, and that's what they do. All right, they start, I told her, I don't want to hear that goddamn shit, and I fucking, I rebuked her ass and never talked to her again. But that's what they do, and it, a lot of white people, and it's not, I don't want to say that, because I don't want, to rile black people up against white people. Okay, it's not all white people. It's just certain types of white people, racist people, and and it's what and stupid people. It's what homo. It's all the indoctrination, all mixed together, all the little training of our thoughts and the things here and there that they subvert, all guide towards. They will not stand up against faggots. They will not, because they're scared shitless, because their mind will be controlled. They'll be tortured to fucking shit. Psychologically, psychically, they'll be socially ostracized. They'll be arrested and maybe skinned alive and eaten by Satanists. Hold on. So they don't, they will not stand against fags. They will say, I am a Christian and I will forgive. When they're not being a Christian, they're being a goddamn fake. And then they will instead blame black people. And mixing up homophobia. Mixing up homophobia with racism is just their way of adding to that. And on top of the training of minds and unconscious through all the media and the institutions, every little thing we believe about psychology, about sociology, about humanity, or not everything we believe, but everything they teach, everything about science, philosophy, and all these things. They and then through different movies and media, even comedy and everything, these little things that get you to accept that, if analyzed, don't have integrity and are false, stand against stuff and they subvert and they train your mind in certain directions. And a lot of this, it's all towards towards cybernetics through programming. And all of our media is now digitized, so that all your business, all your organization, all your entertainment, everything is from a computer. So our minds are trained in that direction. They use that also. And they had the Betamax, which was better than the DVD, the extended definition, slightly better than DVD back in '88. And DVDs didn't come out till late '90s. But they didn't market it enough. They didn't accept it because they didn't want it. Sony invented it, but Sony wanted everything to be, all disc. So they would put it all together towards,
everything digitized, so we wouldn't have separated media. They wanted it all in one, you know, to train towards cybernetics. And they're you know, sex and marriage and beauty of relationships and love, you know, loving relationship, male female relationship, and you know, our basic connection to existence, you know, includes this, and it's very strong. You know, the love for the opposite sex, the appreciation of the opposite sex, and the pleasure of the opposite sex, and the beauty and everything of it, and the desire is one of the strongest things about being human, and one of the most all-encompassing things. So to take that and mix it up with something disgusting, you know, and to make, you know, to include shit in sex, you know, is, you know, to make something that is aberrant and disgusting comparable, you know, and to I mean, they had the vaginal monologues trying to convince women that having an orgasm was taking a piss. And obviously, they ain't getting too much pleasure out of sex. You know, people who are inept, and they you know, in sexuality class they teach it, you know, and act like you are, you know, if you are not, you know, pro homo or, you know, part twisted to part bisexuality, you are somehow not a mature person, you know, and all this stuff, and y'all know what it is. And you know, it affronts and twists something fundamental about being human, you know, and you know, plus blasphemy is a spirit. They want to take our souls. See, the blasphemous final solution. And without souls, and without the you know, the love of the opposite sex and the pleasure of sex, what's the point of being human? You don't have a soul, so you ain't getting eternal life anyway. And you know, they're working on destroying sex completely. You know, for, you know, people who have subverted have much less pleasurable sex, and they're going, you know, they're trying to put it towards shitting and pissing. You know, so you take the pleasure of sex. Well, you know, why would you not want to be a cyborg? You're gonna have virtual eternal life. See. And on top, and they've made the way they've indoctrinated this is also to they've made triggers, and they're enacting these triggers to that spark racism, and they, because it's so thoroughly saturated, you know, that if you go against homo, then you're going to be ostracized, you're going to be arrested, you're going to be attacked, your mind's going to be, you know, literally psychically attacked. And they'd say, oh, that's night terrors, you're just childish. No, it's sorcery. Okay? And even if you don't believe in sorcery, it is, you know, okay, let's reference Carl Jung. Okay, the super unconscious part of your brain is what assesses and gets your idea of society. Now, if that isn't in accord with your own ideology, it's going to have psychological aberrance. Okay, now that's one way to look at it, but that ain't really what's going on. What's really going on is they are using sorcery, and they're attacking you with false accusation, which it says in the Bible, devils. Okay, devil, the Greek word translated devil, means false accuser. The spirits of false accusers, spirits of devils. Okay, spirits of minds. Okay, and that's what's happening. Now, and they on top of all this, they mix up homophobia with racism, so that black people or anyone supporting racial equality or you know, black power or whatever has to support politically, to have a politically active voice, has to support homo and pro-gay. Now, and this utterly neutralizes the movement because it's just doing what the government wants. It is just playing their game and doing it the way they want it. And it's sad. And, you know, they have Obama up there, and, you know, he's been more active for pro-gay. I mean, we lost 17 of them took our votes. You know, millions of people voted twice. Once for the states, once for, you know, each state voted. Not, you know, all but 14 voted for not gay marriage to be legal. And 17 people went and said, no, we don't want that, and they changed it. They overrided millions. You know, so they've got, you know, they are now in power. And there's no denying it, okay? And nobody's going, you know, and everyone's afraid to stand up against it. So they're opting for racism, which is sad. And, you know, and Obama, having been their tool to do the dirty work out in the open, has pushed, you know, this has occurred during his watch. You know, and it started in the late 90s, and it's just gotten worse and worse. But after Obama got in, they started, you know, he pushed for it real hard. And also blasphemy is, you know, people, you know, it's been building since before Obama, but they, you know, they put him in as the figurehead to, you know, to really push it. And they made a lot of legal ground since. And you know, and that's why, you know, and that's what they're doing. You know, they're trying to start racism, and you know, they'll probably come out with a bunch of false racist science afterwards, just like I said back in 2010 or 11 on my videos, where I predicted all this stuff. You know, and they use that, they had that robot come in and blow the guy up. You know, and I mean, all that is advertising